Hey everybody, Adam Davidson, RadCast for Tuesday, May 30th, 2023. Hope you had a great Memorial Day and we're grateful to all those who served. Listen to these words from 2 Timothy. This is Paul writing to Timothy, a young pastor in the church. See if these words seem prescient and certainly fitting for these days. He writes, "For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers who say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. But you, keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, discharge all the duties of your ministry." And that's the word of the Lord. Last week on RadCast, we talked about church hurt. This week, we should talk a little bit about the purpose of the church and what it is we are trying to do. One of the things that the church does is it acts as sort of a guardian, depository, and proclaimer of the gospel. Here's the bad part. People who have heard the gospel and responded to it still live in a world of synchronicity and pluralism where truth is relative and there are forces coming at us all the time trying to pull our ethos, our way of living, our worldview in a different direction. So when Paul is writing to Timothy and he says, there's going to come a time where people who once resonated with the gospel and believed it and lived it out, it's like they'll get tired of it, or they'll hear something that seems better, or they'll hear something that relieves their itchy ears. And he says that's going to happen, and they're going to turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. This is like if you were a school teacher and you taught, say, math, and you went over all of the multiplication tables and the laws of division and got all the way to algebra and calculus and trigonometry, and then all of a sudden in their senior year, kids are like, well, I think 2 plus 2 is 5. I mean, I just can't disagree with the logic. It just feels like 2 plus 2 is 5. I've always wondered that. Now I have this irrefutable evidence here on TikTok. That would be frustrating for you as a teacher, right? Not only did you put in all this work to help a child understand how math works and the logic of numbers, more importantly, they're just denying reality. And sometimes that's how it feels when even in the church, there are people who change something, like something shifts for them. And so the reason that Paul is telling Timothy to do this is because even in the church, there are times where our views get shifted and changed. One of the things that's changing our views on the church right now is all the church hurt that's happening and all the dysfunction that's being exposed. And I just want to point out one thing to you. The church has always been at some level dysfunctional. Don't let the rate of exposure make you think that it's 1,000 or 1,000,000 times worse than it has been. The reality is it's always had issues. Thankfully, and I say this with great joy, thankfully, we're at a time now where those things can be quickly exposed and dealt with so that the church can move on in a healthy way. And I'm not saying the stuff that's exposed is easy. Some of it is traumatizing. Some of it is abusive and terrorizing. And there will be people who will never be the same except by God's grace. However, the way to health is to confront those things, deal with them, and continue forward. The church still matters. We still have a job to do. And so I'm excited as I will be jumping back into a ministry role a week from yesterday. So next Monday, I'll start on part-time, the staff of Central Wesleyan Church in Holland, Michigan. And we're going to be putting together a service that's sort of different from what we're doing now in Big Church. I'll tell you more about it later. But I'm excited about that, especially when Paul writes and he says, but you, keep your head in all situations, meaning don't get thrown about by this and that. Endure hardship, which means don't expect ministry or following Jesus to be easy. He says, do the work of an evangelist, which reminds me that it's important that we continue to proclaim the gospel by our lives, by our words, by our actions, by our love. And he says, discharge all the duties of your ministry, which means get it done. We have a calling. You and I have a calling. You exist for a reason today. And if you know and love and follow Jesus, I encourage you and remind you to go and be the church living and active in the world. People need to see the real deal. I'm excited about the next chapter of ministry, but every day is a next chapter of ministry. So go make the most of it. That's RadCast.